Creationism is belief in the origin of the universe through a series of miraculous events, which cannot be accounted for by natural processes such as we can observe today. Belief in these miraculous events takes precedence over any contrary theory or empirical evidence. Creationism is opposed to evolutionary theory and instead focuses on the belief that there have been no substantial changes. Archaeologists and anthropologists have been at the forefront of opposing the teaching of creationism in schools and have been supporting the spread of understanding the past using scientific methods and evolutionary theory. For example, the Society for American Archaeology website posts teaching guidelines that include statements such as fully modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, have existed for about 100,000 years, and they have occupied the Americas for approximately 12,000 years, and that archaeology follows the scientific process. The American Anthropological Association, whose statement of purpose is to advance anthropology as a science that studies humankind in all its aspects, states that evolution is a basic component of many aspects of anthropology. And their statement on evolution and creationism, they write that anthropologists are encouraged to use their knowledge of both of evolution and of human, social, and cultural systems to assist communities in which evolution and creationism have become contentious. Finally, the American Association of Physical Anthropologists also has an anti-creationist statement in which it condemns any effort by the state to dictate specific religious instructions to the people. Clearly, anthropologists and archaeologists overwhelmingly support science over creationism when it comes to schooling and educating the public. Yet somehow we have let creationism into the heart of our discipline. Creationism is embraced in repatriation laws and ideology, which we define as any belief or political movement that attempts to control anthropological research by giving control of research over to contemporary American Indian communities. And we do not limit it simply to the repatriation of human remains and artifacts. Many archaeologists and anthropologists support the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, which was enacted 30 years ago, specifically, and repatriation ideology in general. Here we will explain how this perspective has allowed creationism to slip into the scientific study of the human past. NAGPRA not only violates the US Constitution's First Amendment that separates church and state, it also helps to usher in creationism into our scientific field of study. NAGPRA's violation of the First Amendment occurs in a variety of ways. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Founding fathers, such as Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, took a strong disestablishmentarian position on religion, which means that the government should not establish religions by showing favoritism to a particular religion or imposing religion onto people. Thus, the First Amendment gives us the right to be free from a burden imposed upon the practice of religion by the government. A good example of this freedom is that courts have found it unconstitutional to forbid the teaching of evolution in public schools, or require that creationism be jointly taught, because it would constitute an establishment of religion. The Lemon test, named after Lemon versus Kurtzman case, is a way to determine if a law violates this establishmentarian facet of the First Amendment. The Lemon test states that a statute must have a secular legislative purpose, its primary effect cannot advance or inhibit religion, and the statute must not foster excessive entanglement with religion. NAGPRA does not pass this test. First, the review committee, which consists of 7 members, has a requirement that at least 2 of these members must be traditional Indian religious leaders. By requiring 2 of the members to be traditional Indian religious leaders, NAGPRA fosters entanglement because determining who is a traditional Indian religious leader requires the Secretary of the Interior, who appoints members to decide what constitutes traditional Indian religion. This act is made trickier by the fact that traditional Indian religions have no texts like the Bible. Interestingly, in the NAGPRA committee hearings, meetings start with prayers, such as, "You have made us not in one mold, but in many, so deep in our unity in Christ that we may rejoice in our diversity. God of nations, help us to reflect and share the goodness that surrounds us," said by the Dr. Reverend Anna Frank, who was invited by the University of Alaska Museum of the North to give the invocation at the August 2019 NAGPRA meeting. This sounds very Christian to us. Furthermore, the requirement that the members belong to traditional Indian religion violates the Establishment Clause because it advances and favors traditional Indian religion over other religions. Another aspect of NAGPRA that violates the First Amendment is the use of oral tradition as evidence. Although NAGPRA does not state that religious doctrines or beliefs can be used as evidence for repatriation claims, oral traditions are rife with religious themes, such as stories of miracles, divine intervention, and magical causes. Many oral traditions also consist of creation stories, such as the Zuni origin tale that helped them claim Southwest lands far outside their current reservation, which includes tales of a watery underworld creation and guidance by gods, coupled with migration through the region that included transformations from webbed-feet horned creatures to humans. The judge acknowledged that their tale was one of religious history, but accepted the story without realizing that to do so meant that he would have had to determine what aspects were true and what were not. Another example comes from the case of Navajo versus United States Department of Interior. The Navajo Nation sued to repatriate 303 sets of human remains and associated cultural objects that were removed by the National Park Service from Canyon de Chelly National Monument, located within the Navajo Reservation. The human remains, some of which are mummified, were curated at the National Park Service Center in Tucson, Arizona. Congress established the National Monument and reserved the right of the Navajo tribe to use the lands for agriculture, grazing, and oil and gas drilling, but the National Park Service, or NPS, was charged with the maintenance and restoration of prehistoric ruins and other features of historic and scientific interest. The tribe argued that the NPS never had lawful possession of the remains under NAGPRA, since the remains belonged to the Navajo. In the first round of the suit, the court dismissed the cause of action because there had not been final agency, action that could be reviewed. But on review, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed this decision and concluded that NAGPRA's inventory requirements applied to these remains. Most importantly, the court accepted the Navajo creation stories that included events in the canyon. The dissent, however, pointed out that the Navajo were relative latecomers to the Canyon de Chelly, and that early inhabitants were ancestral Puebloans or Anasazi, probably related to the modern Hopi and Zuni. These examples illustrate how with NAGPRA, archaeology has become entangled with religion in a way that would never be accepted if this was Christian creationism. But creationism acceptance goes beyond the law. Repatriation ideology has also enabled creationism into research and field schools. For example, some anthropologists have suggested that Native American perspectives should be added into the scientific study of the past. J. Sweever, for instance, promoted a common origin myth from Native American oral traditions, polygenesis, which means distinct origins for different people. Polygenesis was disproved by Charles Darwin over 100 years ago and was once used by colonialists to argue that they were better than the natives that they were encountering. Others have suggested that Others have suggested that anthropologists and archaeologists stay away from topics that may contradict oral traditions, avoiding taboo topics such as migration patterns and ensuring that the questions asked are ones that benefit the tribe. Field schools are promoting religious discrimination, such as excluding females from handling warrior remains or working while menstruating. Perhaps most egregious is the lack of anthropologists and archaeologists who are willing to take a stand against Native American creationism statements, such as when Armand Minthorn, who was appointed by President Clinton to serve on NAGPRA's review committee and is a tribal councilman and spiritual leader for the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Reservation in Northwest Oregon, said, "We didn't come across no land bridge. We have always been here." Or the lack of challenging works such as Red Earth, White Lies, Native American and the Myth of Scientific Fact by Ben Deloria, who by way of opposition to scientific theories offered stories of miraculous events told by the traditional Native Americans' religion. Some Native American repatriationists have even adopted the Christian creationist catchphrase about evolution. It's just his theory, to dismiss research published on migrations into the Americas. Where is the cry to follow the science here? After all, the American Anthropological Association encourages anthropologists to use their knowledge, both of evolution and of human social and cultural systems, to assist communities in which evolution and creationism have become contentious. And this conflict has entered our own anthropological community. We propose a different perspective on human remains and artifacts based on objective knowledge rather than creationism. In countering creationism, we should strive to conduct research with an emphasis on the search for the truth, even if we never obtain it. This is best done through the scientific method: observe, hypothesize, gather data, analyze, draw conclusions, and repeat. By promoting objective knowledge and scientific reasoning, which can be most simply defined as logical thinking, we're doing our job as anthropologists and archaeologists, helping students, colleagues, and the public understand the world around us and negating the misinformation promoted by creationism. Let us encourage an anthropology that looks at the world through a lens of reason and keep ourselves free from the entanglements of religion, as the First Amendment of the US Constitution intended. Thank you.